One day, the Swiggy man comes to deliver, and apparently he ran over a little sapling in his hurry to go and deliver the food elsewhere. So my grandson jumps and says, Jai Bajrang Bali, and runs to the little sapling, puts it back, and goes to his mother and says, see, he hurt Sitama. I'm Hanuman. I put it back. So for me, your book has impacted a child's mind. Otherwise, Sita would have been this heroine, much suffering heroine, and all this drama about getting banished and bringing up children. Today, he has become alive to my grandson. So for him now, Sita is nature. So now wherever he goes, he's very conscious of the butterflies, the flowers, the trees, that it should be all right. Nobody should hurt it. So thank you so much for bringing that consciousness into our lives, to the lives of people who have lived Ramayana in a very different way.
Let us chant Om together. So I want to begin not with the story, but with a few words from the untold story of Sita. And these are words at the end of the book told by Sita's attendant Soma. So the servant Meenakshi died and was reborn in Ayodhya. And when Meenakshi died, Sita was had not returned, so she didn't know what happened to Sita. But she's reborn in Ayodhya and she's seeking for the true story. So she is able to find this old attendant, Soma, who's now a very aged woman, and Soma narrates to her what happened to Sita after Meenakshi had died. And then she gives her some counsel for her life, because this reborn Meenakshi is a young woman of marriage age, preparing for marriage. And she's still very troubled by the past, or very much caught in the past. So Soma is helping her plan for the future. And this is something we touched upon yesterday, about how we release the past and move into the future. So this is the counsel that Soma gives her. As she says, in relating to Ram and Sita, she says, they are near and dear, and they care for each one of us as if we were their child, because, in fact, we are. I've come to know Mata and Sri Ram much better since their departure from this physical world. Departure is not accurate. It is not the correct term, for they never left. But our language is so limited. Mata once told me that words will never replace the way we used to converse through images, through thought. Now we are reduced to words. Mata and Sri Ram are as active today as ever. When she was before me in the physical form, that is what I saw. That is what I knew. That was who she was to me. Now I see the reality of what she is, of what both of them are, and I see their hand in everything that transpires in this world. Now that was said then, and that is as true today. The active presence and involvement, and many of us can see it in our own lives. I spoke yesterday of this great yogini, Yashesh Sogyal, who went through the hell realms to liberate her greatest oppressor. When you look at Sita going into Lanka to free Ravana, her devotee who had fallen, the effort that is given to each one of us, the divine ones have a very personal relationship with each one of us, and much effort is expended to help liberate us from our illusions. And that's very touching to me when you really reflect on that, on the care given to each one of us. And it was said yesterday that our challenges end up being our gifts, our blessings, if we step back and see them in light of what we can gain. So there's another brief passage that I want to read. And this was about the last words given to Hanuman, because after Sita leaves her body and it just dissolves into everything, Ram continues to go on leading the kingdom, and then it's time for him to leave his body. He goes down to the river and deep in meditation, and Sita comes to sit by him. Just as he came to take her away, she comes to lead him into his true nature, into the ultimate. And Hanuman, who's far away doing their work, realizes this and runs. His beloved Ram is about to leave the body, runs to him. And so Soma is telling this story to the reborn Meenakshi, the story of Ram leaving his body. She said, I will tell you one more story before you leave that was told to me by Hanuman. And this is a story for the future. A future that you and so many others will help create. When Hanuman found Sri Ram seated by the river, with Mata by his side in her light body, not visible to the physical eye, many of the citizens of Ayodhya had gathered, as word had spread that Sri Ram was in deep meditation. Sri Ram had been waiting for Hanuman's arrival before leaving his physical form. After he spoke his last words to Hanuman and his physical form dissolved, Hanuman heard words coming from the invisible realms, as if from the combined voices of both Mata and Sri Ram. They said, the love that permeates the celestial worlds also permeates the earth and all her creatures. But it is the human being who has the potential and power to awaken this love. You are the perfect expression of love, Hanuman, and you must seek to awaken this potential in all. This is their lasting message to us, to awaken our own potential to embody love, said Soma as she closed her eyes. I could feel that she had entered another state of awareness. A few minutes later, she opened her eyes and added, that love cannot be a mere concept in our mind, but must become real. It can only become real by loving others. Show your husband the same love I've spoken about these last days. Let the love between Mata and Sri Ram shine in your life with your husband. That is what you must do. So she's giving advice to this young woman who was resisting marriage because of something that happened in her past. But Soma helps her realize that she has to let go of the past and move into the future. And that's a universal counsel. For us to become love, we have to manifest it in every aspect of our life. And so when I reflect on this, and I say to myself, would I go into the hell realms to liberate my oppressor? And I know that I'm not ready to do that. I have to be honest with myself. I would maybe do it for a loved one, for a child, for a sister or brother, but an oppressor? But that's the state I want to achieve. I want to be able to say at some point, yes, I would do that. I would do that for the biggest rascal, because that rascal is caught in illusion and is harming the world. And if you liberate him, you free so many from the suffering that rascal causes. So that's a state yet to be attained, but it's something to aspire for. So I'd like to hear from you. This session I want to end on love, because that is the power that we need to bring into this world. That is the only thing that's going to bring about change. When I speak with young people and they say, give us some advice, I say to them, fall in love with the earth. Fall in love with the earth. Love the earth, love the forest, love the rivers. When you love something, you don't harm it. And so to try to correct actions without that love is not going to really work, because there's always, oh, but we need this for energy, or we need this for that. The rational mind can always think of reasons to do things that create damage. But the key is really awakening that love that we have. We have that potential. As Soma said, we have that potential to manifest the same love that Sita manifests, that Ram manifests, that Tibetan yogini manifests. So I open the floor now for comments.
I would like to just bring it into the circle. You mentioned Hanuman being the embodiment of that love. So, and they say, he's here right here, and they say he didn't leave his body. He's still he's an immortal who chooses to be as long as he wishes to in his embodiment. Could it be that Hanuman is the avatar for our time then, as an embodiment of bhakti love that will take us to all the other dimensions of love?
I think that he is one of the avatars of our time. I think there are many manifestations of maybe not many, are manifestations of this love, and Hanuman is certainly one of them who keeps returning here for that. I also see the presence of Sita and Ram. There are people today who have actually seen their physical forms. They can manifest. You can see them in the subtle world. If one's subtle vision opens, you can see their subtle forms. But they can also assume a physical form, if need be, for a purpose. And I think that this divine love is constantly manifesting itself to help awaken us. And we talked yesterday about the collective, that all the problems facing humanity, they're so overwhelming, how do you solve them? When the love energy is strong enough, and we talked about meditation, because meditation helps awaken that love energy. Meditation alone may not do it, but meditation with the help and guidance of these divine beings who lift us up, help to manifest more love on this planet. And that is what is needed to solve all the problems. All the problems would be solved. Climate, crime, violence, war, poverty would be solved with a greater manifestation of love.
I just wanted to comment that it's a beautiful concept, and in my experience, it has been hard at sometimes to love, outside, and the only way that I have been able to do that is by internal love, and meditation has been an incredible tool for that, to find that self-love that becomes so big, that permeates my whole entire body, to be able to share it with the outside world. So I just wanted to make a comment on that.
Namaste. Thank you for such a beautiful story, part of the story again. I'm enthralled by the original story of Ram, Sita, Hanuman, and Hanuman being the embodiment of unconditional love. And I've been, since my kids were little, I've been telling them the story, right? And when they were little, they were wowed by it and they loved it. And my little son, when he was 4 or 5, he loved the story of Hanuman being the son of the god of wind and all that. But now they're teenagers and they're cynical. So when I do the Diwali rituals and I say, okay, let's
go over the story again, what's the moral? They're like, Mom, it's just a story, leave it. We don't want to do it anymore. So, how does one in this day and age instill that concept of devotion, complete devotion, like Hanuman had for Ram and Sita, in this totally digital generation? Like you said, we need to tell young people to, it's all about love. But then a large part of the younger generation is totally disconnected. And when I can't enforce it as a mother, it's too much. They step back or they run away. So I'm just wondering if you have any tips on that, like how do we, in a beautiful and soft manner, can still tell this beautiful story and inspire that devotion in children or teenagers?
You asked a very important question, and it's something that I have reflected on a lot, because some years ago we shifted our work from doing interfaith, which is how we started, to working with young people, young in their 30s mostly, late 20s, who were very disturbed about their future. I mean, the climate crisis, who is it going to hit most? It's young people today. And the fact, a lot of young people are choosing not to bring children into this world. They're saying, what kind of future can I offer these children? And when I was younger, I found that there was a real divide between the spiritual community and the ecological, environmental community. That's not true today. A lot of the young people who are doing environmental work realize two things. One is that they're going to get burnt out because the work is so huge, that if they don't have a grounding practice, a spiritual practice, they're going to fall into despair. And the other thing is they can be more effective. They can have a much greater impact if they draw upon their spiritual resources. So that has been our particular niche, is looking for people who are really concerned about the state of the world, but who understand the need for a spiritual practice. I have found with the young people, you have to speak to them in terms of nature, falling in love with nature again, connecting with nature, which is why Sita is such a perfect archetype, actually. That question came up in the first session. What's her archetype for today? For young people, she's of the earth. She was born with this love for the earth. I mean, the stories of her with the animals and the plants, and that resonates with young people. So forget the bigger picture or the traditional narrative. It's helping young people develop that consciousness that was prevalent at that time, a consciousness of the Treta Yuga that we've lost, where we don't see a separation. We don't see it's us versus the whole natural world, and that we're superior, and that we have the right to take whatever we desire from the natural world. Changing that narrative is critical, and that's part of what is needed for evolution now, changing the narrative that we are superior beings who could take whatever we want, regardless of the consequences. I mean, how many millions of species are going extinct? We act like it doesn't even matter. We're polluting the seas. I mean, I just read about my home in New York. There's a nuclear power plant that was shut down, but they're going to release a million tons or whatever of radioactive water into the river. Nobody's talking about the fish life. What's it going to do to the fish life? They've spent so many years cleaning up that river, and now they're going to release this millions, gallons it is, I guess, of toxic water to the river. Until we can change that consciousness, and it's the young people, because it's their future. It's their future. And they want a clean world. They want to have clean water. They want to have clean air. They don't want to have all these toxins in their body. And in order for them not to get totally discouraged and depressed, they need spiritual practice. And they need to awaken this love for the natural world. And so however we can communicate them, whether it's through the traditional stories or new ways, but this is why I find the Sita story so relevant today and her presence so active. because it is this love for the natural world that she's trying to awaken in us.
Thank you.
I want to just add that our stories have to be relevant for our young people. We have to make them relevant for our young people. And that's the challenge that we face, without losing the essence of the stories. For example, in the West, I know, there were a lot of people who didn't want to hear Ram, because in their mind there was Ram banishing Sita. What a thing to be deep in the consciousness. Ram is the essence of Dharma. How can you equate Dharma with banishing a pregnant wife? There's no, it doesn't make any sense. But through reading a different story, Ram also needs to be understood anew. Ram totally supported his Shakti, Sita, in everything. He understood her sacrifice when she voluntarily went into Lanka. I mean, he was her partner in every way. You know, and the many stories of how that their partnership. And that's the beauty of the model, because today we need a model of balance between the male and the female. The male needs to be supported, the higher male energy. So we've just spoken about the ecological issue, but there's such an imbalance. And we talk about toxic femininity and the masculinity in the West. There's toxic femininity too. Both have manifested at the lower level in our recent society, That needs to be corrected, but not by blaming the other. It's by lifting both, by lifting the feminine into the higher feminine manifestation, by lifting the masculine. We tried to have a dialogue a year ago on the higher masculine energy, because I felt that was so important. To me, Ram is the perfect example of that higher masculine energy. And we reached out to some men. The younger men, when I say younger, I mean in their 30s, didn't know how to talk about this. Some of them said, I'm sorry, I don't know how to address this. The older men fell into stereotypes. So I'm not giving up on the subject, but I thought to myself, oh boy, there's so much work that needs to be done. For my organization, we focused a lot on the divine feminine over the years, but I felt the need to focus on the divine masculine too, because the rebalancing is what's needed. We need both in our society. And if the young men are troubled and can't find within themselves that higher masculine energy, we're in trouble as a society. So just wanted to put that out there. Oh.
Thank you. Yeah, I can want to say, because we talked a little bit about this one time now. It became very clear to me that we are everything in our society which women are moving towards are all higher status. You can put that word now. And all the space that men need to move into, and boys, is lower status, because the women thing has all been put, and I use very simple example, a girl becomes a nurse's helper. That is fine. It's not a social problem. A girl becomes a nurse. That is a good job to have. A girl becomes a doctor. That is really excellent. No. A boy becomes a nurse's helper. He's a failure.
That's right. That's right.
A boy becomes a nurse. Well, that's kind of funny, no? A boy becomes a doctor. He's in his place. Okay. So unless, because I was at this in Gujarat when Kirit Joshi wanted to start this children's university which would be focused on child development from prenatal and up to 20 or so. No? So the talk was hardly there about the girl child, though she's supposed to be in center. But it's not sufficient to talk about putting her in the center unless we start to shift this narrative in society, because then I say, children have more fun with their fathers than with their mothers. if the fathers are there. As a mom, it's very much like, you care and you nurture and you're afraid that they will, it's a whole chicken mama thing which is there, no? While the men play more, if they can take that space, no? So actually this thing of not losing the father, because in a liberated society where women walk off if things are not okay, the children lose their fathers actually massively. It is happening in our societies, no? And I'm not saying you should hang up marriage when it is bad. Absolutely not, no. But there is something we need to work with, which is that nourishing aspect in men is so infinitely important that comes out and gets honored, because that is a part of the balancing of society.
That's right.
It is we talked about it. It's so at the heart of the thing. And I find it amazing when I look at my own situation and when I look at many other women who are moving in this field and also are present here, how many of us have men who stand behind us and support us? That is an amazing thing when I suddenly see that I have it, and then I see it in my friends around me, what a gift it is. And they have their own lives. It's not that they don't have, but they are not threatened, and they love to support somehow, or naturally supports. No, it's a huge gift which is happening, but that is a very, very conscious thing which has to come, that we need to shift the status of nurture in society. It is, I can't say I know how to do it, but I think it's infinitely important. And I think what you bring with Ram here is exactly that thing, no?
We have models. There's a scene in the Rukmini book which I wanted to read, but we just didn't have time. And as I said, Rukmini set up a place for women to take refuge where they were being treated poorly. And there's a scene where the daughter of the general of the army, Narayani army, the army of Dwarka, the daughter, is being forced into a marriage that she doesn't want. And she seeks refuge with Rukmini. Rukmini takes her in. The general, Krishna's general, goes to Krishna and says, I want my daughter back. Can you? Krishna says, I can't interfere with Rukmini. But nobody interferes with Rukmini. What she says, that's what she does, nobody interferes with that. And the way we see it again and again in the book, the way he stands behind Rukmini. Now, that's not the way the narrative has come down to us in the tradition. The narrative in the tradition, why is Rukmini so special? Because she's the first one to go worship Krishna in the morning. That's how the narrative comes down to us. But in truth, she was the Shakti. And she does many things in the society which is already in a state of decline, because the Kali Yuga is approaching, already in a state of decline. And women are already losing their status. And she does many things to help the women in that society. And Krishna totally supports her from behind the scenes, totally supports. He gives her free reign to do as she needs to do. And so I think there are many, we all need those men. We need the men who are supporting us and seeing the importance of the work of the women now. Because I do think that what is our work moving into the future? A lot of healing work is going to be needed for this planet. The physical healing of the planet and the healing of societies that have been subjected to so much violence. We all need like a massive collective healing, earth healing. And that's part of the work that women do.
This morning I was happened to be reading a part from something that the mother talks about, which is this new age that is coming, which we also call it the new earth, and something you also spoke about, that we are transitioning into. We're in the upswing of the Dwapar Yuga. She speaks a lot about letting go of old paradigm. And that seems almost like a language that, I sense it happening even for me in terms of, like in my personal life, that so much is dropping away and I'm being asked to which may be happening to, I think, a lot of us personally, and then it's also happening at the collective. But I feel, I mean, I want to ask if you have insight into how these yugas over the millennia have transitioned, and what has that looked like, and do we have any blueprint or direction for how to embody that right now? I don't know if it's clear, but just something to maybe guide us, and maybe because you have the knowledge, like, of, so much that you have seen.
So there is this book called The Yugas, which actually describes the qualities, it's on Amazon, which describes the characteristics of the different yugas. And we can already see, I mean, we're just at the beginning of this ascending the Dwapara Yuga, and which is the electrical age, the age where space is conquered. So there are a lot of scientific and technological advances. That's the outward show. Internally, what are the changes in consciousness? Well, one of them, and this actually creates a danger, like all of the technologies that we're creating has a dark side too. You see it with the atomic, you see it now with this new chat box that's come, this new AI thing that has, we're just at the beginning of the AI revolution. It has benefits if it's used wisely. It has tremendous negative potential. Like, all the pornography that's now on the internet that wasn't there before the internet, because now it's just so easy. So it's about consciousness change. One of the qualities of the Dwapara Yuga is a new self-assertion. So in the Kali Yuga, most people just didn't challenge their situation. However you were born, that's what you lived with. You didn't seek to improve yourself, to better yourself. There wasn't this self-assertion, which is much more of the whole thing of rights. That wasn't in the consciousness of Kali Yuga people, rights. What does that mean? We have a deep consciousness of my rights, my human rights. And that is something that needs to be worked out, because that could be taken to the extreme. Freedom, the concept of freedom, all of these things that came about, with the ending of colonization, ending of slavery, these were all positive steps. But this idea of my freedom, like in the US, we have this my freedom to have a gun. Never mind your freedom for safety. My freedom is more important than your freedom. So this is where it gets dangerous, when my freedom becomes more important than your freedom. My freedom to do what I want, even if it's harming the environment, even if it's causing dangers to society, like through guns. And so we need to work out, and I think this is one of the challenges of humanity now. We need to balance individual freedom with the collective well-being. What are the lines? And I think that's because we're just at the beginning of this movement into a higher age, which is still not a terribly high age. It's not the Treta Yuga, but it's moving toward, they say in the Dwapara Yuga, it's 50% Dharma, living according to Dharma. Treta Yuga, 75%, Satya Yuga, 100%, which means that generally society as a whole will have a more dharmic foundation, more dharmic than the earlier stage. But we have to work that out. And so how are we going to balance this need for our individual freedom with the collective well-being? I see this manifesting. I just came from Oroville. I saw it manifesting there. You see it manifesting everywhere. This tension. Perhaps it's most extreme in the US. Right now, this battle between individual freedom and the collective well-being. And I'm hopeful that it will be worked out. I mean, society has to step forward, and we have to realize that everybody has a responsibility to the collective well-being. And again, come back to love. I mean, people, this gun culture that we have in the US, I'm just using that as an example. If people could listen and hear that parents are afraid to send their children to school, something has to be done. We can't allow our schools' children to be subject to mass violence. And yet somehow my right to have a gun is more important than that at this moment in the US. I'm hopeful that will change. It may take another generation to change it. But at some point, we have to move into considering the collective well-being more than our own personal desires. It's the same thing, with all the violence in the media. I mean, do we not think of how that's affecting children, how they're internalizing this violence? It's again based, so there's the two issues, the profit and the individual freedom to do anything within the law. And these two things need to be moderated by how is it affecting the collective consciousness? And so I think one of the movements into a higher age is really considering the collective consciousness. But now there are signs. For example, the whole world economy is run by GDP. GDP means how much economic exchange. In other words, if you have a sicker society, there are more hospital visits, your GDP goes up because there's more economic activity. But there are new initiatives to factor in environmental damage, human health. If your society is sick, well, that's not a good sign. Education. So there are initiatives to reconfigure how we assess the success of a society, not just based on economic activity. Economic activity could be deceptive. And so we're at the beginning of new thinking of how to live as society, but we have a long way to go. And it's really going to be up to the younger people to manifest a new way of living together. Does that answer your question?
Just everything what you say deeply resonate within me, because I've been also part of the feminist movement and environmental activist movement and spiritual movement. So all these things coming together, and I just want more to provide a kind of input on the discussion that Jaya also raised in terms of inviting men and what you were saying in this creation of a new emerging paradigm. Being a feminist, I know that we had a lot of anger and resistance which men could feel, and also seeing so many single women leaving their marriages and all that, being so deeply disappointed with their men, that we created this new sense of sisterhood, which has been beautiful and supportive. But going also back to some of discussions here on our energy field, it has been crystallizing our belief that we just cannot rely on men. They are not enough of available whole men who are working on their spiritual practice. And then in all this experience, I have started one project in Croatia. I have returned back after also spending some time in India to Croatia to start a project on Terra Mira. It's called Center for Regeneration, where I'm now promoting the whole regeneration movement in my country.
Oh, beautiful.
Yeah. So, because that has been part of my work, but now I'm not doing it anymore in that kind of activist way, which I've been doing it before, because I have seen so many burnouts, including my own and many of my colleagues. And since I have started to shift my spiritual inner world of indeed embodied love, I started to invite the men, not to invite them from outside, but to invite that possibility of support. And it has been just, not as a partner, but just the men support to help me to build the project. And in many different forms, they have started to appear. And I would just like to share with you one very touching moment that I had before I came here. I've been restoring this stone house, and I've come to one abandoned village, which is a village that was affected by the Yugoslavian war, and it got abandoned by Serbs and they all went to Serbia, although they were Croats, Serbian ethnicity, but Croatian citizens. And I don't want to go into much detail, but anyhow, at the time of the civil war, they all left. So the villages was totally abandoned, maybe 20, 30 people living there. And I decided to go there as a Croat. And many of my family and others said, where you're going, you are going back to that war-torn village, and you as a Croat, how can you go there? And by the way, I was married to a Serbian man, and so the story goes long. But when I got back there, the people were, when I started to envision the project, and Nilima has been a beautiful co-creator in all that, and many, many women and many of my international networks, they were just so delighted that I've come as a Croat to reconcile and to rebuild, and the local, some local men have been returning slowly, not just because of my project, but there has been a lot of reconciliation going on in Croatian society. So now with my project, as I engaged a lot of local men, stone workers and metal workers, and all of the really powerful male skills and competence, and I built a really beautiful space. I mean, not I built; they built it, but has been created. And just before I came here, we were just finishing one aspect of the project, because I was organizing a women's retreat. And they were really wanting to finish this for this weekend, to the extent there were 4 men. And then they realized that could not be finished by that morning for our cleaning, and it was needed to be for the evening. And then they decided also to clean the whole space. And so that was all ready for that weekend. And it was just, and then we brought them because they loved the chocolate that I was giving them every morning with the coffee. And all of us, 12 women, we all bought chocolates, and we put them in the middle. We gave them the chocolates and honored them. They were just so humble and so, I mean, I can cry how beautiful it was to see how they were happy to serve Divine Feminine. And I realized that my thought that men are useless and they don't support us and all that was crystallizing in me. And when I opened my heart, no, they love to be part of this feminine emergence.
Yeah.
They did, they didn't charge me much. They were just happy that there is a single woman creating such a huge project that is good for their village, and I can say I've been witness of that, and I think we can really do this place by place.
Absolutely. Are you from Zagreb?
No, I'm from Šibenik, from the coast.
I've been there. I've been to Zagreb. I've been along the coast. I've been to I started my work right after the war in Bosnia. I was in Bosnia right after the war. That was the beginning of my journey.
Wow.
I love that place. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. That has been our experience too. When we founded the Global Peace Initiative of Women, we had a lot of men come to our meetings, and now the name is a little deceptive. We say that the women hold the vision and shape the dialogues, but it's an equal number of men and women, which is our intention, our goal, equal number of men. And a lot of the young people we work, they don't even think men and women. I mean, it's just balanced. And the men need the feminine energy, and I feel we need the masculine energy. I mean, that's the beauty of this creation, is as long as we're in the dual world, as long as we're in manifestation, I mean, the ultimate sense, we're part of one, but as long as we're in the relative world, we need the energies together. And it is changing. I mean, little by little, in the 25 years that I've been doing this work, I definitely see changes. Maybe not at the grand level we'd like it to be, but in smaller ways, we see a lot of changes taking place.
There's one very famous, now famous writer on regenerative work, Daniel Val. He wrote a book, Designing Regenerative Cultures. He said sustainability and regeneration will never, I mean, of course, we need top-down policies, and but we have created the Earth Charter and all these, sustainability development goals. But regeneration is not going to happen globally, because where the global happens is locally, and we are going to create regeneration place by place, bioregion
Absolutely.
by bioregion.
Place
And
by
that's
place.
how we're gonna, so if each of us, and we don't need to buy land, okay, I'm in Croatia, we have a lot of that land and we can do that. We are a small country, and I know many people live in the cities, but we can create urban gardens. There are so many initiatives that we all can do in order to put our foot into that space where we all can create space by space, where we do our little work of regeneration.
Glad you're doing this in Croatia, in that region, because, I mean, healing takes a long time, right?
Yeah, and I'm now, when we talk about it, actually with Nilima, we are organizing a conference at the end of April on Regenerate Europe, where we initiated to invite what we call regenerative change makers with the best practice examples, so that we, my vision is to have my vision. I should not say
already a
that.
generation.
Vision to see Croatia becoming a regenerative society by 2040. And then I know it's very huge, ambitious, given so much corruption and everything, whatever is going on, but to start spreading the message of positive practice examples and just gathering people who dared to live, going back to the earlier question, how do we live the new earth in the new paradigm? There are more and more daring individuals who, I found beautiful individuals who went in Croatia and in Europe into biodynamic wine production and wineries and vineyards and organic food production, who dare to step into that space and creating also economically viable projects that are not kind of movement which happened with the hippies that marginalized themselves and running away from the mainstream. Now they are in the mainstream, but creating totally different economic initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing those beautiful stories. And while you were talking, we were discussing about boys and men that support us. And I completely remember my beautiful husband, which is Harman, supporting me to be here. And he's an amazing man. And I was just thinking here, why is he like that and others are not? Because this is my second husband, and my ex-husband wasn't like that, for sure. And I realize here that the connection, the beautiful connection he has with his mother, this beautiful mother, this loving mother, the beautiful connection he had with his grandmother, I'm sure this make him the special man that he is. And at the same time, it made me realize through Shakti leadership, I was part of one of the cohorts in Nilima, and my project for us to graduate is all inspiring my grandmothers. It's called Rosita and Pepa. And since 2018, I've been interviewing a lot of women, men around the stories and the relationship with their grandmothers, and understanding that this relation, it goes above and beyond just like the biological grandmother. Some people didn't have that grandmother, or it wasn't present, but there is something universal around this archetype that even if I don't have kids, but I realize that even I can be that grandmother to my nephews, for example. I can give that love and that caring. And I think this is what is missing, because I think when I talk to some women, and actually before coming to India, I was in the UK for work, and I was talking to a lady that works in the same company, and she's ready to retire, but she was really afraid and telling me the story of how she's now a grandma, but she's really afraid of, she has a conflict in her mind, like, I'm feeling old, I don't want to assume this role. And I was trying to make her understand the importance of this role. Because for me, my grandmothers, I wouldn't be here sitting in this place looking for what I'm searching, and the woman that I am without them, without their love. Like the same, my husband is the same. So some of us women, I think we're forgetting the special role that we have in life. Being mothers, being aunts, being grandmothers, how that it touches the boys and the guys and the men in our lives, and we just complain about them, but then we are not giving that love and that caring that is sometimes just too simple, with simple and beautiful things like Sita. It's just through a food, to giving some love. Because when I ask them about the stories and memories of about the grandmothers, it's just simple things. It's about a food, it's about a hug, it's about a story that grandma read, and it's just about that. So we are forgetting, and I think Sita is making us remember that the important role that we have as women, especially, to change through just beauty and love. So I just wanted to share that. And thank you for.
I'm glad you brought up about the role of grandmothers, because in all societies, grandmothers have been crucial. And that's something that's being lost because the families are so dispersed now and they don't live in close proximity. And that's a loss for the society. It's a loss for the society. And then we need to consciously reclaim that. Yeah.
Hello. Thank you for everything that you've shared. I just wanted to add into the violence part of it, and also the overwhelming sense that everything is quite big. And for me, I feel that so when I watch my garden in the wet season, it triples in size over a week. So I can see how nature can grow and replenish and rejuvenate itself in moments. And I feel that if we start focusing on small things such as our breath, like when we're in Shavasana, and it came to my attention the other day, I moved whilst I was in the middle of it, and just the violence that it was to your body through not being aware of your breath in that moment, to become aware of that, and also to become aware of beings that come into your presence, such as like a wasp landing on your hand. How do you respond to it? How do you react? So I feel if we become really aware of all these really teeny tiny interactions with our world, that she will replenish herself right before our eyes. Yeah.
Some people say it's not that we have to heal the earth, it's we have to heal ourselves.
Yeah, so in our moments of being with ourselves, so how we interact with every part of our inner world really does become represented on the outer world.
The earth has regenerative powers. If we disappear from here, the earth will be fine. But we have to focus on healing ourselves of our unconscious destructive tendencies, where we're not just conscious of what we're doing to the life around us.
Dina, first of all, thank you for this most beautiful book that you brought out. I'm steeped in the stories of Ramayana, being an Indian woman, brought up. And when I read your book, the way you presented Sita Mao did something to me. I couldn't put your book down, read it from page to page, and I'm not used to doing that ever since I've been wearing my glasses. I told my daughter, who's married and who's got a little son of 8, I said, Geet, you must read this book. And she said, okay. I sent it to her, and she was just blown away. And she brings up a son for whom his superhero is Hanumanji. And she told him about Sita Ma, and they have conversations about all this. They go to the temple, etc. One day, the Swiggy man comes to deliver, and apparently he ran over a little sapling in his hurry to go and deliver the food elsewhere. So my grandson jumps and says, Jai Bajrang Bali, and runs to the little sapling, puts it back, and goes to his mother and says, see, he hurt Sita Ma. I'm Hanuman, I put it back. So for me, your book has impacted a child's mind. Otherwise, Sita would have been this heroine, much suffering heroine, and all this drama about getting banished and bringing up children. Today, he has become alive to my grandson. So for him now, Sita is nature. So now wherever he goes, he's very conscious of the butterflies, the flowers, the trees, that it should be all right. Nobody should hurt it. So thank you so much for bringing that consciousness into our lives, to the lives of people who have lived Ramayana in a very different way. Thank you.
I have to say that writing the book was transformative for me. I'm not the same person I was before because so many teachings were coming to me. I mean, I was the scribe. So many teachings were coming to me, and I've changed. You know, my whole awareness of how Sita fed everybody who came. Now, anybody comes into my presence, I have to feed them, because there's something. That's one way to express love, is feeding people. And there were so many little ways just in my personal life that I changed. You know, in terms of, yes, being conscious of being in relationship with the natural world. To me, it's now all about being in relationship. I saw the way Sita was in relationship with everything. And in so many ways, I'm so grateful myself that I was able to be in the presence of Sita and to receive these teachings in her presence. So, and my only hope was that people could, through the book, come into her presence, feel the presence of Sita and Ram, who is my beloved. What can I say? You know, it's Sita's love for Ram, Ram's love for Sita that I want to manifest and bring more into my life. So there were many, many teachings that came to me, and I just pray that whoever reads the book will be touched by Sita. Thank you.
So this is back to our role in this world. I work with a lot of young people, and as you get older, they come back to you. And that's what I would say, that your children will teach their children what you taught them. My mother always used to say, you have to teach them before you can't carry them, because once you can't carry them, you can't make them go anywhere. So you have to get everything into them before you can no longer lift them and put them someplace. And so I think it's in them. I had the experience about a year ago of running into a 35-year-old that I had worked with when she was a teenager. And she said to me, when I was training with you, I was a professional figure skater, so she was training with me as a figure skater. She said, when I was training with you, I got raped. And coming to be with you was the only place I was safe. And so you carried me through that experience. She never told me at the time. I didn't know that I was carrying her through that experience until, 20 years later. So you don't know in that moment what you're giving. But as you get older, they come back and they tell you what you gave them. So I feel sure that you have passed that on. And I just think that our role as women is to give that essence to women, because women are the ones who are raising up the children. And if we can elevate the consciousness in our children, then they will, in the United States, white women voted for someone who openly hated women. I felt like, how does this happen? How can you place your vote of confidence in somebody who hates you? But it's what happened in our country. So those women are raising their sons, their daughters to continue that. And I feel like that's where the change needs to happen, so that women elevate women instead of crushing other women. And that's on us to elevate each other constantly. Because we're the ones who are raising up the next generation, and that in turn raises up the next generation.
Thank you, Dinama, for bringing, or validating, or reclaiming the mother in India. We have, in our narrative, we have been packed them in such a different manner that for me was an empowering space to read your book, and I completely woke up and then I said, why do we do that? Why do we do that in our country, that we never really truly have honored our women? But I never had any things to refer back and affirm it till the time I read your book. And I'm very deeply grateful to Neelima, who brought me to in touch with you. And then I saw you in our international advisory board in Auroville, and I was dancing, saying, that's it, we are in a right space. What I have been noticing is this: having a peace within oneself is so important for a Shakti, for a yogini. And the magic begins where we are at peace with ourselves, and consciously and unconsciously not passing our trauma to someone else. We are in a very nurture position. So this reclaiming the peace within should be our priority, and not to, especially I've been seeing women beating themselves up. They are least in their priority, and they talk about love and care, but it's always about others, not about themselves. And this has been quite bothersome, that how can we talk about love and care and be embodiment of it, but I am not caring or loving myself? And that has been also a pattern which I kind of work on this more as other part of my work. What I'm intrigued with, Devi, was yesterday when you brought in saying, calling and talking and receiving the future. Is there any message for current yogini shaktis who are aspiring towards making the space right now better? What can we draw? How do we draw from future? Would you say something on that?
Well, that has become my focus right now, the future, because we are creating it. And as I mentioned yesterday, so many projections of the future are dystopian. And I say to myself, oh my God, what are they doing? Why are they putting out these dystopian visions of where we're going, instead of a beautiful vision of what the potential is to manifest? It's our choice where we go as a human community. It's our choice. And there is a growing body of conscious people on the planet that can together manifest a much better future. And we have to begin to envision that. We have to begin, especially those who've reached a certain stage in life where we've let go a lot of things of the past. I gathered in the US a group of spiritual elders. And one of the teachers said to me, let's bring together people who are not building their own profile, who are not looking to build a gathering, who sort of like have moved beyond all that. They're not building ashrams, they're not doing any of that. We're not looking to be on a circuit. We're just really thinking about the future. What can we give our last years to? And it's to building this vision. You know, the Native Americans have a practice where they go into the desert and they have a visioning period of a few days where they don't eat, it's their personal vision for their future, a visioning of their personal future. But we can do it as a collective. And that's what I think is needed right now, to counter these dystopian images that are being put into the collective mind. I say in different parts of the Sita book, what Ram and Sita were doing is putting into the collective mind, into the collective concepts of Dharma, in order to build a foundation based on Dharma. And they were seeding those thoughts of justice, because they knew that will carry humanity forward. And so the society at that time was built on, that was the foundation of a Dharmic civilization, which over the millennia degraded as consciousness became less awakened. Now we're moving into an upward cycle. We need to seed the collective consciousness with an understanding of Dharma. We have to bring Dharma back into the foundation. And that's a whole conversation we can have on what that means. But concepts of rebalancing, of respect, of seeing ourselves as an integral part, understanding the interconnection. We use the word interconnection, we use the word interdependence, but do we really live that? Do we really understand what it means? You can say, you know, politicians use it, the whole economy is interconnected now, the global economy, and we know that ecosystems are interconnected, but do we really live with an understanding that when you hurt one part, you hurt the whole? When anyone suffers, we all suffer, because we're part of one consciousness. And so there are a few specific shifts that, if those shifts happen, will affect how society manifests. And it's the understanding that we are part of one whole. This idea of human unity, it can't just be a phrase. It means that when one part suffers, the whole suffers. When we harm part of the earth, we all suffer. We can't think that we can harm part of the earth, we can pollute the oceans, and then we're not going to suffer. That it's over there. We're just harming that, and we're going to be spared. It's like we're all part of it. And so I think drawing upon the positive forces to insert that into our future visioning. And I think that's something we can all do in our meditations, is to project ourselves, project into the future. And how should society look in the future? 50 years, 100 years. Right now, I'm projecting 200 years into the future. What will that society look like? It's yet to be created. It's yet to be created. And we're all part of that creation. And so we can't give it over to the dystopian visions. We can't accept that and let that be. And I think people don't realize, it's like all the media, all the violence they put out there, they don't realize the impact it has. Our thoughts affect everything else. And so we have a responsibility to be in a position of holding high thoughts, of holding elevated thoughts, and not allowing ourselves to be drawn into fueling the negative. And people do not understand the power of their thoughts. The power. One of the we just held, as I mentioned, this summit in Oroville on science, spirituality, and human awakening. And there are many scientists who are on the edge, understanding the power of the mind. The power of the mind. We have such powerful potential of the mind to move matter, change matter. I mean, the advanced yogis know that, to affect the weather. I mean, our thoughts affect all of that. Our thoughts are very powerful. We're powerful beings. And our thoughts create the outer reality. The outer reality is a manifestation of the inner reality, of the inner state of humankind. All the violence out there is a manifestation of the inner state of our species. And we have to change the inner state in order to begin to change the outer reality. It goes from the inner to the outer, not the outer to the inner. what happens on the inner plane manifests in the physical world. And so we have to work with the thought realm. And there are many ways that we each have our own way, our own spiritual practices, our own meditation practices ways of doing that. But I think collectively, if we can begin to lay out the blueprint for a more dharmic world, that's the work we need to do. Is that, yeah.
Hello, my name is Shanta. I came from California. I just came here to spend 1 week in Rishikesh, and I saw that Shakti Kumbh, and I saw in that the speaker Dina Miriam, whom I know very well, I used to think. And I read that book, Untold Story of Sita, before this. And then, actually, before, what I used to think is, I used to read news coming that the ladies were treated very badly, and sometimes rape cases. And I used to relate those things with Ramayana and Mahabharata. What happened to Sita? Even Sita was treated very badly. Mahabharata, even Draupadi was treated very badly. Even olden days it was like that. Now it is like same it is. Nothing changed. And in that thought I was always going on through. And even the Ramayana and Mahabharata, my grandparents, whoever that told the story, they used to tell the same stories, what they used to read from the books. And I came to read that book, Untold Story of Sita. Everything in me changed completely. I thought that, oh, Ram didn't treat Sita badly. She's completely different. Then I got to know by reading that book, and Dina Miriam, completely changed me. And I also started telling the story to my husband. Please read this book. It is so nice. Very nice book. It's completely different. Sita was not treated badly. She was treated very good. She's completely Shakti. I told to my daughters, everybody read this book then afterwards. And I was so happy, and everything changed in me, the thinking of about Rama. And in your book, you wrote that you went to a Raghunath Swami temple, and you had an experience. If you tell about that experience from your words, I'll be very happy to listen. And also one more question. Can we change our past karmas through meditation?
Change our past?
Karmas.
Karma.
Karma. Through meditation.
Yes. We can neutralize through spiritual practices, through working with the subtle energies in the spine. We can neutralize much of our past because we sometimes it can be. There are many stories. There's also the guru often takes on karma of the devotee also to help the devotee advance. And there are many stories of how the guru has, instead of having a terrible thing happen, a more minor thing happens. So a more terrible manifestation of that is alleviated. And a minor thing happens to balance that out. So things have to be balanced out. I feel my attitude is that I want to grow in understanding. Whatever karmically is coming to me, let it be for my own growth. It's not that I want to escape anything, but I want to grow in understanding. I want to awaken. So if something comes, let it be for my awakening. If I have to go through painful relationship, let me learn what I need to learn. And let me awaken quickly to that so I don't repeat. I mean, there are many, we don't want to we cause suffering to someone in the past. Okay, let us learn from whatever we have to experience as a result of that. That's how we awaken. So I think that through spiritual practices, through deep, sincere spiritual practices, it helps us awaken. And so that we learn the lessons we need to learn, and maybe we don't have to go through that experience. The whole purpose, as I've said, I no longer see karma as a system of reward and punishment. It's a process of awakening. And if we learn that lesson and can awaken, then maybe we don't have to go through that experience. And so we will attract to us whatever we need in order to awaken, so that we can be beings who just emit love and help the whole of creation that we serve. My feeling is, I know that I will. This life is not my last, but let me not come back because of karmic compulsion. Let me come back to serve the greater creation, so that I can help other beings who are still caught in samskara, in their cycles where they can't seem to get out of that. I mentioned yesterday my experience with a dear friend of mine who committed suicide. And my hope is that if I encounter that person in the future, such a person, I can help that person. That I can have the spiritual skills to really help that person. So this is the journey that we're on, to finish whatever remains of the past, so that in the future we can serve better. The experience I had at the Raghunath temple, I describe it in the book. It was a very personal. I had written a book already, my first book, this is my second book, where I share many experiences of having remembered my past and seeing their connection to my current life, and seeing the workings of cause and effect, how something that begins here finds its completion here, and many things come together, and it's a beautiful weaving mosaic. I got to see that. And then I had organized a conference in Varanasi on Dharma. How do we understand Dharma today in our society? And a few friends of mine were there, and I said, well, it's easy ride to go to Ayodhya. This was 5-6 years ago. Let us take a train to Ayodhya, with no expectation at all. So we took a train, and as soon as I get to Ayodhya, and I'm walking through Ayodhya, and it was a time years ago where there was a lot of security, you had to go through checkpoints. It was very painful to visit Ayodhya at that time. You could only stop for a few minutes at the spot where Ram was born. I found myself not in Ayodhya, but back in Mithila, in ancient Mithila, and seeing things and hearing things, and I was just drawn back in time. People often ask me what that process is like for me. It's very hard for me to describe, but it's like I get sucked back into another time period, and I'm living that time period again. And initially, when these things started to happen to me, it was destabilizing, because I had to function. I was functioning in this time period, but I was back seeing another time period. It was hard to bring it all together. But over time, I've learned how to manage that process. So I had this trip to Ayodhya, where I found myself back in time. And then 6 months later, I was doing a yatra with a group of spiritual teachers through Kashmir, starting in Ladakh, going to Srinagar. We had a dialogue in Srinagar with young Kashmiris. It was very difficult. Then we went to Jammu, and we had a dialogue with the Kashmiri Pandits who had to leave, and the next generation who had grown up in refugee camps. And I thought to myself, this is not publicized. People hear about Kashmir, but they don't hear about the Kashmiri Pandits, the next generation who's grown up in the refugee camps. So we were going through all of that. Finally, it was all over, and a guide said, you want to go to Vaishno Devi? And I said, sure, I'm here. Let's go to Vaishno Devi. And I was tired, and it was hot. It was early June, pilgrimage season, mobs, millions of people. And I thought, oh, how am I going to handle this? But the way opened up for us, and our guide just took us in front of all the lines, took us right up into the shrine, into the cave. And we actually could spend quite a bit of time there. I don't know how it happened. But I took in that energy of that ancient, ancient cave where all the Devis, the 3 Devis, had come together to join their energies in ancient, ancient times to defeat a powerful Asura. But I didn't feel anything particular. Often there's a time delay between, for me at least, for when you go on a pilgrimage, when you receive the blessings. You stand there in front of the shrine and you don't feel anything, but days later, it's, oh my God, power of that. So that happened to me. So the next day before leaving Jammu, we were taken to the Raghunath temple, there was nobody there. We were alone in the temple. And there were the Murtis of Ram, and I pranamed before the Murti, and there I had that vision of myself as a child in the presence of Ram, with the blessing he gave me. And from there, the whole book unfolded. And for a year, I was living in Sita Loka, writing about Sita, writing that story, being in the presence of Sita, getting so many messages, feeling myself in another era. And I didn't want to finish. I didn't want to leave that Loka. And I thought, well, it's like, this is, I want to stay here in this space, but I had to finish the book. I had to publish it and get it out. And I thought that was the end, actually. And then the next year, I was on pilgrimage to Dwarka. And it was in Dwarka that I met that dancer, and the whole story unfolded. And that's how it is for me. It's often when I go to a place, I can't emphasize enough the power of pilgrimages, at least for me personally. When I've gone on pilgrimages to these sacred places, I have had such extraordinarily powerful experiences, often after I return and I sit in my meditation and I receive the power of the place. So that's how it's been, that's how it was for me.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question because I want to look into the future with all of us. It seems to me the time has come for the yoga of collaboration and distributed leadership. And this Shakti Kumbh, even someone asked us, okay, who's your group leader? Let's get the orders from the group leader. And I said, I don't know who's the group leader, because this was designed as a distributed leadership convening. And in any moment, any convener can stand up and take that decision as needed in the moment. Same with this group of women who have come, and how do we create a sense of kula or collective that together we can do more than what we can do individually? So when we're talking about the future, I'm curious, do you have a sense of what is the future of leadership? Because I don't think there are enough models out there for collective or distributed leadership. It's a totally, we all know by ourselves, if you're given the reins, if you're a good conscious leader, you'll do the job and you'll do it well. But to do it as a collective is a whole different ballgame. Conscious, collaborative leadership. And I think the future is going to need models like that. I think women are perhaps going to be better at holding and evolving those new models of leadership. Is there anything like that you have seen in the future or you can guide us towards?
I think you're right. I think that may be something that women help to evolve. I think that is an ideal for the future. I think we're still, in order to get there, one has to come from a place of service and not personal needs. You can't need to be in the spotlight or need to have power. And perhaps because we as women have not held political power, economic power, we're more suited to do that because we see the dangers of that. I think that is part of the new paradigm, is not having a few people who hold the power simply because it's been so abused on so many levels, economically, in terms of governance. But I think those models need to be developed. They're not readily available. So we're in the creative stage. We're in the stage of creating that. And this could be one example. I mean, it first will manifest in small ways, not at a national level, but it will manifest in small groups. We've also held that model in our organization, where we see ourselves as conveners. We bring people together so that something can emerge out of that collective. And I think that's now the focus, is having a convening capacity where you bring people together and collectively create something. And some people won't feel comfortable with that. because it's where's the leader? We're trying to get away from that model. So, yeah, please.
Yeah, I actually like that approach. Can I just add some examples of how you can actually do it? Because I have worked with teams to actually do this. So, a good example would be natural disasters. I've had first-hand experience after tsunamis and earthquakes hit several countries. The usual approach around the world is for like the Red Cross and all those organizations will go in, they'll give food, they'll give medicine, they'll give water, and they'll settle people into camps, and then they get on with their lives. So I realized very early on that once that big media phase is over in CNN and BBC and NDTV and everything, and the emphasis shifts to somewhere else, no one actually checks what's happening to the communities, what's happening particularly to the women. So a perfect example is when the tsunami and earthquake hit Palu, Sulawesi in Indonesia. I'm sure you all heard about that. It was one of the worst earthquakes. Now we have just one happening in Turkey. The issues here are very, very clear cut, and as women, you will feel it. Teenage girls, or other girls as young as 12 and 13, will be picked up straight away by human traffickers. Because they're vulnerable, right? They're displaced. So you have displaced children, and this happens to boys as well. So what are we doing about these displaced children who may have been separated from their parents, their grandparents, because the homes have perished under an earthquake? What happens to this teenage girl that is of marriageable age, and there are all these predators out there who will swoop in? It happens all around the world, South America, Turkey now, wherever. So what we did was we wanted to have some mass movement of women who would go there and help them to rebuild their lives. So an example would be, we knew that water supply would be disrupted, there'd be no toilets. Women have to go and defecate in public somewhere. That's the first opportunity for a girl or woman to be raped, maybe even murdered. So quickly put in temporary toilets. Quickly put in little places for the kids to safely have some studies. Next thing you know, we are empowering the women to grow their own food. Fast forward to a year later, they're actually having a cottage industry. The women actually were trained with the use of contractors that we brought in to actually build their homes. We got the men involved to say, look, we need to have the women as village leaders. There's some resistance, obviously, from men. I've seen that with the Native Americans in Canada. I've seen it with the Aborigines in Australia that we worked with. But as soon as they see that the women can take charge, become organic farmers, take charge of the food security, take charge of the education, take charge of the land and the water. We had women actually establishing water pipes and becoming water technicians. Who knew that a woman in a farm could be a water technician? But we brought in professionals. So this dystopia that you talk about, it can be transformed into a utopia. All it takes is women like us to get together and say, what's all our skill sets? What have all of us got coming from wherever we came from? What can we bring to this space? And then no more human trafficking, no more child marriages, no more all these horrific things that are happening to women and girls, and even little boys. Little boys just carted off to some places where their lives are forever horrifically changed.
Thank you. Wow. Yay, I love where this conversation took us. Incredible. Absolutely. Fabulous. So we've come to our time and what an incredible 3 days with you, Dinama. And I hope everyone here has had the opportunity to really soak in not just what you were saying, but also receive the energetic transmission and the levels of consciousness from which you were saying what you were saying and what you have received. So thank you so much. I don't know where our boys have run out. Okay, yeah, all right. We have very small token of our gratitude for you, Dinama.
The mother. Thank you. Thank you. Beautiful.